All right, guys, welcome back to another episode. Today, I have a very creative individual alongside me, Aditi Rijhwani. Aditi is a author of the book The Engraved Butterfly, which is now available on Amazon. So, Aditi, welcome to the Nerdish Mic. And how are you feeling at the moment?
First of all, thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity. This is going to be my first podcast,
Yeah.
and I'm feeling very excited and a
Mhm.
little nervous,
Yeah.
but overall everything is good.
Okay. So, I'm assuming that you are having some butterflies in your stomach, which is all okay. That
Yeah,
that
that's normal.
Yeah, that is very normal. And actually, it happens a lot of with my guest as well. Actually, they tell me that, there is this butterfly or there is this nerves that they feel before the recording. So that is absolutely fine. So, yeah, Aditi, to start with, I want to bring you back to your childhood. Okay. So I want to ask you that what was your earliest memory of, first of all, reading poetry, and how did it transcribe to writing it? So I'm very curious to know it.
Okay, so I've read Charles Bukowski before,
Hmm.
like I went to this boarding school, but I feel like I started my poetry journey when
Hmm.
I was in my boarding school,
Hmm.
and I studied poets like Maya Angelou and Robert Frost, and like
Hmm.
I've analyzed their poetry,
Hmm.
and it's just such an amazing feeling to look at people transforming their situations and their
Hmm.
struggles into something
Hmm.
people. And I
Hmm.
feel like that gives voice and
Hmm.
awareness to
Hmm.
people who are going through something similar. Like
Hmm.
Robert Frost
Hmm.
has written poetry about war, about life.
Hmm. Hmm.
I feel like the most famous poetry of his is like The Road Not Taken.
Road not
I feel
taken.
like
Yeah.
that, and I've studied that, and
Yeah.
I totally get that. And Maya
Hmm.
Angelou talks about
Hmm.
she's an African American. She was an
Hmm.
African American, and she talks about her struggles as
Yeah.
a black feminist
Hmm. Hmm.
in a society which is a white male
Hmm.
dominant.
Hmm.
So I feel like all of those things put me in my journey of writing poetry.
Hmm.
So that's how I started, and that's how I'm here.
Yeah, beautiful. So a little follow-up to that question would have been like that, how has poetry actually inspired you to, to transform in a better version of yourself? So when you talk so highly about poetry, I am, really excited to know this as well, that how has poetry added value to your own character?
Okay, so I feel that I really support the idea of how emotions should be expressed, and
Hmm.
I feel like in culture, the question "Are you okay?" is
Hmm.
not asked very
Hmm.
frequently,
Hmm.
and that has to be something that has to be done,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so I feel like with poetry, I get a chance
Hmm.
to express my emotions in a way
Hmm.
that people would resonate with it
Hmm.
and that would help them too. In the beginning, I started writing poetry with just giving a voice to my feelings. And I
Yeah.
feel like that voice was very important for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
But like as we have proceeded and have
Hmm.
released a book, I feel like the poems I've written then and the poems I've written now has like
Hmm.
a lot of difference. And I've grown and I've evolved and I've
Hmm.
gotten to know myself even more with even more depth. So
Hmm.
I feel like that's what poetry has given me.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, actually, a portion of your book actually talks about this particular portion of men who are actually very, dominative, and it targets them as well. So, I mean, I want to make it a little bit argumentative, and I really want you to open up on this key. Do you feel that this society is actually male dominated? If yes, then why?
Yes, I do believe that. I definitely believe that it's progressing,
Hmm.
that there have changes,
Hmm.
and but it's definitely still male dominated.
Yeah.
From I wanted to talk about the survey,
Yeah.
and there was a survey where women were asked that if there were no men for 24 hours, what would you do?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
the women answered
Yeah.
like, I would go take a stroll, or
Yeah.
I would keep my drink unattended on a bar.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I feel like these things are so normal, but
Hmm.
women have to be aware and vigilant when they go out.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's not equality
Hmm.
because you're scared that something might
Yeah.
happen to you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something which says a lot, that
Hmm.
even to do regular things as a
Yeah.
woman, as a female, when I go out, I'm also very aware
Hmm.
that, okay, this shouldn't happen this way and all of that. So I feel like in that way, it's very male dominated
Hmm.
too.
Hmm. Yeah, actually, a part of me would not agree to some portion of this answer. The reason why I'm saying this is because I feel, on a personal level, I feel the most number of men who are in prison are men. The people who do very horribly bad in schools are men. People who die in wars are men, and people who take care of this whole city as in a holistic manner are basically men. So the only thing that is left with us to evaluate man and his dominance is the wealth portion. Okay, I feel a majority of men is dominating this whole spectrum of our livelihood by their wealth and capital. So I think it's a question, or it's a discussion to be made in a very broad manner. And I actually, find too many nuances into it, that I somehow don't feel that men are very dominative, because when we speak so highly about equality and everything, I feel that progressively you are seeing equality spreading in all over this planet. And without saying that, I would also say that men who take care of this city as a whole, they need to be aware about their own rights and their own methods of doing something on a first place. So what do you think about that?
I feel like so do women have to be aware,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
what they can do and what
Hmm.
their rights are. And honestly, feminism is not about being against men.
Yeah.
It's about being against the idea
Yeah.
that there is inequality
Hmm.
because of gender.
Hmm.
We're not
Hmm.
fighting against men.
Hmm.
I feel like I have had really good men in my life.
Hmm.
My dad, I have
Hmm.
two brothers, and I
Hmm.
have Kai and everybody. And
Hmm.
I feel like they're so supportive.
Hmm.
And so we're not against men. We're just
Hmm.
against the ideology that, that women should be discriminated against while giving opportunities.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's everybody's right to have
Hmm.
the same opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's my idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where it gets interesting. I think more on that, we should be aware about our responsibilities. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because we as men do not know that what are the awareness, according to the awareness point of view, what are the things that we can do as men and what are the things that we can avoid. So I think a lot of that confusion comes from the undervalues and the underrated civilization that we are being, actually fed up with. When we talk about sex education, there is no open discussion around these things, that how a man should behave in front of a woman, that how should a boy in front actually enact or behave in front of a girl in order to make her feel comfortable. A lot of this unawareness actually comes from the days of our childhood only, where we are not actually taught, or we are not actually talked about this in an open manner actually. So what would you say about this whole as a phenomena, that we as the male of the society are not actually taught anything about sex education? So our natural inclination that becomes in the progressive manner becomes pornography. Okay, whatever we learn about sex and everything, it's the natural inclination actually turns out to be pornography, which is actually a simulation, which is not very real. So I think to put you in a situation and to ask you on this, I would ask you that, supposedly you have to teach a younger sibling of yours about sex education and everything. Okay, and he or she has just hit his puberty, and now it's your utmost responsibility to guide that particular individual in the best manner, to so that he or she can learn about sex education. So what are the things, what are the tools, what are the elements that you are going to use in order to teach that particular individual about sex education, and how can that individual actually normalize it?
Okay. So I feel like there are a lot of questions,
Yeah.
and I'll try to answer all of them. But I feel like definitely it stems from you being a child, because I feel a lot of child abuse cases happen because
Yeah.
younger, even not just men, even women are
Hmm.
not taught about sex education or sex.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I feel like even they're inclined to feeling a certain way, not
Hmm.
just men,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
it's whole,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like if sex education is given to men and women,
Hmm.
then I feel a lot of child abuses case would decrease, Because if a woman knows what's happening to her is actually wrong or is something that shouldn't happen, she would speak up. And I feel like that's the thing. Even if women know that something wrong is happening to them, because of the whole victim blaming ideology, they wouldn't speak up. Because, like, as a woman, I wouldn't call police if I'm in a situation like that. I would call my brothers, or I would call my friends. Because the first question would be, why were you out? Why were you wearing that? And why weren't you accompanied by a male? Or if you were accompanied by a male, is he a friend and all of that? So, and that happened. And I feel like that's really bizarre. So that's one thing. And the other thing about how I would manage is basically, first of all, normalize it, because it is a very natural instinct. And like hunger and sex is as natural as hunger. But I feel like in an Indian society, it's a taboo. And I feel like that's one of the reasons so many rape cases happen, because this idea of our most natural instinct is suppressed. So, and then again, they go to pornography, which is not a very good side to be at.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I feel so. I feel like I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw someone talk about what you can do instead of pornography. So you can listen to podcasts. There are podcasts. You can read things. So like explore things in a different way. I feel like that's one of the things that we could focus on, definitely. I feel like because of the suppression, all the sexual violence is just rising, because this is our natural instinct. And if we go away from it, I feel like it's just going to be destructive.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed on that. But the basic theme of this podcast was decided on poetry. So I want to bring you back to it. So, I mean, just to ask you that, do you think that poetry is actually dying in our country?
I feel like there's much more awareness now, but it's also a very small niche. So, I mean, it's very difficult to grow in with an audience like that, because I also feel the idea of expressing your emotions is not really familiar in our society.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like even if you do put out poetry, there are so many people educated, well educated from pretty good schools. They don't understand it because they've never faced their own emotions, you know. And I feel like that's one of the reasons that poetry is not very familiar with everybody in our society.
Okay, so how would you encourage the female section of the society to come up on the screen and start doing something that is, actually spread in a creative manner? So supposedly, if I take poetry as an instance, so how would you encourage them to start, actually reciting poetry in front of a screen, and how can they actually normalize it? Because somewhere down the line, I see that poetry is going to be extincting. Okay, there is a large possibility of the extinction of poetry, because we as youth are not totally aware about its benefits. We only see that it's a it's a lively factor that can enhance the quality of life that we are living. But down the line, we need to make sure that it needs to be revived. Okay, if you are reading poetry, you are not only reading just for the sake of reading it. You are reading it because you are actually giving the birth to a new culture. So coming back to the question, I want to ask you that what are the resources that a female can use in order to revive this whole phenomena of poetry?
So I feel like I'm no one to tell anybody to express themselves in a way. But obviously, I feel like it's therapeutic. So I feel like the main motive for me to write poetry, or I feel like everybody to write poetry, is to create awareness and to express themselves. And I feel like many people do it in their own way, but the outcome should be expression of emotions and building awareness. So if you do it in any way, I feel like that should be good. I do it in a poetry way, somebody else does it in a song or anything. So I feel like that's just a beautiful thing, that what we create out of art and what we do.
It means that it's only a matter of finding our own niche. Okay, so if we are all scattered in all the direction, and if we are trying our hands and everything, then sooner or later we are going to find that one particular thing through which we can actually express ourselves. And for you, it has been poetry. For me, it has been doing this conversations that could add value to people's lives. So yeah, absolutely agreeing to that.